Thank you, Anderson. I am Chris Cuomo, and welcome to Prime Time. Let's look again at that picture of the last service member to leave Afghanistan earlier today. This will be in history books. The Pentagon just put it out. They say the war has ended.
If an American in Afghanistan tells us that they want to stay for now, and then in a week or a month or a year, they reach out and say, I've changed my mind, we will help them leave.
President Biden will address the nation tomorrow. He cannot really be expected to tell you how they're going to get the rest of the Americans and the allies out of Afghanistan. But here's the question for him. Can President Biden reassure you that you will be just as safe here at home without America being in Afghanistan? To the better minds, former CIA counterterror official Phil Mudd and retired Army Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis, who served 2 combat tours in Afghanistan and is now a senior fellow with Defense Priorities. Welcome to both of you. Good to have you.
Thanks.
A momentous occasion, to be sure. What it means is what we will discuss. So, Phil, let me start with you. What does the day mean, and can President Biden say to America tomorrow, we can keep you just as safe here at home without being in Afghanistan?
No, he can't say that, but I've also heard people talk about this in intelligence terms as a disaster. I would disagree with that heartily as well. Look, you've seen some of the collection in the past few days when there are strikes both outside Kabul and inside Kabul. I'm going to bet that a lot of the collection that led to those strikes will continue afterwards. Some of that is remote. That is stuff like drones and intercepted communications. I expect drone operations to continue. I do not believe you will see an absence of U.S. intelligence officers in Afghanistan in the coming months and years. I expect cooperation from some of our friends there, some of the contacts that we had when the Soviets were around. Some of those warlords are still around. I guarantee you they want to talk to the Americans because those warlords don't like the Taliban. Another clue, the Americans are moving to Doha, Qatar. Qatar is one of the countries with the closest relationship with the Taliban. Why are we moving there? Because we're going to use the Qataris diplomatically, and I hope in other ways, to gain access to Afghanistan. So it's friends, it's overflights, it's things like visits to people who are close to us. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I think it will be harder. I don't think you can argue that we're safe, but I also don't think it's a disaster, Chris. We'll figure something out.
Well, just because it's not a disaster, Phil, doesn't mean that this was the right move and done the right way. There's a lot of space in between, but you do pick up on a good point, a couple actually, which is just because they say no boots on the ground, Colonel, doesn't mean no shoes either, right? You can have intel people there, you can have different operatives. Just because it's not an official U.S. military presence doesn't mean the United States is not going to be there. So the government's having a little bit both ways. But sir, thank you for being on the show. And what does today mean to you?
Well, I'll tell you, just on a personal level at first, it's a really sobering time because all of these places, whether it was Bagram or Kabul or a number of these other places, Mazar-e-Sharif, Berat, I spent a lot of time on the ground. And now then to see that the Taliban is in complete control of all of that and everything that we did, all the investments that we made, all the blood that we spilled is literally for nothing. And the reason why that's so egregious to me is because I've been trying to tell people for well over a decade, since 2010, I said, if we don't make these significant changes, we will lose the war. None of those changes were made. But the worst part is that our senior leaders at various levels knew that it wasn't working. And instead of being honest about the situation to the American people, they hid it so that we continued thinking it was working. But all that did is lay the foundation for this disaster that has unfolded here now.
One more point for each of you. First, Colonel, is it fair to say that it has come to nothing when we haven't had another major foreign terrorist attack since 9/11, and one part has to be the presence in Afghanistan?
Well, see, I actually argue pretty vehemently that it had nothing to do with the troops in Afghanistan. Look, I was there when there was 150,000 U.S. And NATO troops, and there were vast section of the country in 2011 that we had no acknowledgement in at all. We had no power, no influence in. So if the Taliban owning a piece of terrain was going to open it up to the Taliban or to Al-Qaeda or any other group, it would have already happened years ago. And then what about Syria? What about Iraq? What about Pakistan? All these other places, Somalia, where there's plenty of opportunity, but we have to defend against those places as well, and we do for the very reason you pointed out there, because we have intelligence capabilities and we have kept ourselves safe. So I don't think this makes us any less safe.
Phil, what is your take on what the Colonel just said? And what do you make of the suggestion that the United States should have kept Bagram? They should have kept a force there. They should have kept that site, and they could have used it for these exits, obviously, but they could have used it just as a position in control of a place that can get very deadly very quickly.
Boy, I'm going to say I love the U.S. Army. I don't think we could. I was at CIA. I was Deputy Director of Counterterrorism. We couldn't have done it without them. And that is, in the beginning, we didn't know everywhere Al-Qaeda was. We didn't have a lot of time. And without the taking of geography, I'm not sure you could have just used special forces of the CIA to move into Afghanistan and eliminate the networks that were there quickly enough. We thought the next 9/11 was happening. I thought we were losing, Chris, until about, I'd say 2004, 2005. I thought we were losing. So I would agree with his assessment today, but in terms of taking us back to when we started, man, we were in deep trouble. In terms of Bagram, I don't buy it. Look, I've flown into Bagram. It is a long way to Kabul. There's a lot of territory. When you're driving along that road, what that territory means is every time you get in a car, you might get hit by an RPG. You might get hit by something else that the Taliban or somebody else, some rogue Taliban element or ISIS-K is thrown at you. Every scenario people come up with, why don't we have a stay behind U.S. force? Well, the Taliban took the country over. Where are you going to put that thing? So every scenario people come up with, including Bagram, I'm going to tell them, let's have a conversation because there's a different scenario. I'm going to tell you it's worse, Chris.
Let me end it with this. On 9/11, I lived it. I lost people there. 11 days later, I got engaged because I was so convinced that this was the new normal and nothing was guaranteed. And the next day could be horrible. And if anybody had told me it wouldn't happen again for 20 years, I would have thought they were off their meds. But Phil, on the intel side, Colonel, on the military side, whether you want to take credit or not, as an American, I am very grateful that guys like you and the women and all the staff and all the people and the allies, 20 years, there hasn't been another major attack. And I think the gratitude has to come first, even though I know there's a lot of disappointment. Stop shaking your head, Phil. Take the thank you.
No, I'm with you.
It.
Thank you, U.S. Army. They saved us. Thank you.
Shaking his head. He won't even take a thanks, Colonel. This is why I need you to come on this show more. This guy can't even take a thank you. That's why I got to balance him out.
I'm looking at you dressed in the Chris Cuomo cadaver collection. I'm like, man, I got to get off here. I can't take it anymore.
I only dress this way. It's because it's how I feel on the inside. Phil Mudd, thank you very much. Colonel Davis, Daniel Davis, thank you for being with us. Thank you for your service to the country. And I hope we get to continue having you and your perspective on this show. God bless and be well.
I appreciate it. I look forward to more of this.
Absolutely. Be well, Colonel.